The night air was biting as I stumbled up the snowy driveway, clutching my baby tightly against my chest. Denver's winter was relentless, and I was barely dressed for it, my clothes in tatters and soaked through. The cold pierced me to my bones, but the thought of finding refuge drove me on, step by painful step. My baby, wrapped in a thin blanket, was my only source of warmth and comfort. I reached the front door of my brother Michael's house and knocked weakly. My hands were numb, and my vision was blurred by tears and frost. I could hardly believe I had made it this far. The door swung open, and Michael, my older brother, stood there, his face registering shock and concern. "Carol," he exclaimed, his voice a mix of disbelief and worry. "What's happened to you?" Before he could say more, I collapsed into his arms, my strength gone. Michael quickly pulled me inside, his expression turning from shock to deep concern. He led me to the living room, where a fire crackled in the fireplace, its warmth a stark contrast to the bitter cold outside. I sank into a chair, and Michael draped a thick, cozy blanket around me. Even so, I couldn't stop shaking. "Who did this to you?" Michael's voice was tight with anger and concern. His eyes fell on the baby, peacefully sleeping despite the chaos. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "It's a long story, Michael. I need to tell you everything." Michael sat down next to me, his face softening with empathy. "Go ahead," he encouraged gently. I nodded, my mind racing back through the painful events. "You remember when we lost Mom and Dad in that car crash? I was just 5 and you were 10. I began. Michael's eyes clouded with the memory. "You stepped up as my protector after that. I don't know how I would have survived without you." Michael's gaze was steady. "I've always been here for you, Carol. We went to live with Grandma and Grandpa," I continued. "They were well-known artists, and they took us in when everyone else turned us away. They gave us a stable home. You excelled in academics and sports, and eventually learned carpentry from Grandpa. I pursued a career as a schoolteacher. Life seemed good." Michael smiled faintly at the mention of our grandparents. "You were always so driven." "Then I met Tom," I said, my voice trembling with bitterness. "He seemed charming at first, the son of a wealthy businessman. I thought I had finally found happiness. But things started to go wrong after we got married." Michael's face grew tense. "What happened?" "I moved into Tom's family home," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Tom's mother, Evelyn, was a wealthy real estate investor. At first, she seemed welcoming, but it soon became clear that she despised me. She would belittle me and make me feel like an outsider." I paused, struggling to hold back tears. "She wasn't just verbally abusive, she was physically abusive too. She'd pour boiling water on me, hide sharp objects in my food, and even tried to push me down the stairs once." Michael's eyes widened with anger. "And Tom? Did he do anything to stop her?" I shook my head. "Tom started changing too. He became distant and harsh. His mother's influence made everything worse. He began to treat me like a servant." Michael's fists clenched in anger. "I'm so sorry, Carol. What about your father-in-law? Wasn't he able to help?" "He was ill," I explained. "He tried to defend me, but he was too frail. He told me to hang in there, but things just got worse." "Tell me more," Michael urged, his voice full of concern. I took another deep breath. Tom's hostility grew, and I was pushed to the breaking point. I was reduced to a housekeeper, enduring constant mistreatment. One night, I knew I couldn't stay any longer. I grabbed my baby, took what little I could, and ran. I had to leave. My father-in-law gave me some money before I left, and I took a cab here. Michael's face was a mix of shock and rage. "You're safe now, Carol. We'll figure out what to do next." I nodded, feeling a small glimmer of hope amidst the despair. Michael's support was like a lifeline, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like there was a chance for things to get better. Michael and I sat by the fire for a while, the crackling flames a soothing backdrop to the unsettling silence. My baby slept peacefully in a makeshift crib Michael had quickly set up. I stared into the fire, trying to gather the strength to continue my story. Michael broke the silence first. "Carol, what happened next? After you left Tom?" I took a deep breath, the memories still painful. It was a hard decision, but I knew I couldn't stay there anymore. Tom's behavior had become unbearable. I felt like a prisoner in my own home. Michael nodded, his face a mask of anger and concern. "You mentioned before that Tom's family was wealthy and influential. How did they handle your departure?" "That's just it," I said, my voice trembling. Tom's family wielded a lot of power. His mother, Evelyn, had this facade of sophistication, but behind closed doors, she was a tyrant. She made it clear that she expected me to serve her, and Tom, too, started treating me more like a servant than a wife. Michael leaned forward, his expression intense. "Did anyone try to help you? Or was it just you against them?" "My father-in-law tried to help," I said, my voice breaking. "But he was sick and couldn't do much. He'd tell me to stay strong, but his own health was deteriorating. He was the only one in Tom's family who showed me any kindness." Michael's face softened with sympathy. "I'm sorry, Carol. I can't believe they treated you this way." I wiped away a tear, trying to focus. Things took a turn for the worse when Evelyn started using her wealth and influence to isolate me. She manipulated Tom into believing that I was the problem. He became increasingly abusive, both emotionally and physically. I was constantly walking on eggshells, trying to avoid his anger. Michael's jaw tightened. "That sounds like a nightmare. How did you manage to get out?" "I didn't have many options," I admitted. "One night, after a particularly brutal confrontation, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I packed a few things and took my baby. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to leave. My father-in-law gave me some money, but it was barely enough. I caught a cab to the bus station and headed here." Michael's eyes were full of determination. "You're safe now, Carol. We'll figure out how to handle this." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief. But there's more. After I left, I had to start over from scratch. I was exhausted and scared, but I was determined to build a better life for my baby. Michael looked at me with a mix of admiration and concern. "I can't believe you went through all that. You're incredibly brave." I managed a weak smile. I didn't have much choice. I had to be strong for my baby. Michael paused, considering what I'd said. "Have you thought about what comes next? How are we going to address this situation with Tom and his family?" I sighed. "I've been thinking about it. I know I need to take legal action. I can't let them get away with what they did. My father-in-law secretly recorded some of the abuse. I plan to use that evidence in court." Michael's eyes lit up with a mixture of hope and determination. "That's a good start. And you don't have to do this alone. I've been studying law, and I can help you with the legal aspects. We'll get through this together." I felt a flicker of hope. "Thank you, Michael. I don't know what I'd do without your support." Michael placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "We're family, Carol. We'll face this challenge together. It's time to fight back." As the evening wore on, the warmth of the fire seemed to melt away some of my fears. Michael's support was a lifeline, and I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of the darkness I had been trapped in for so long. But the road ahead was still uncertain, and I knew that confronting Tom and his family would be a long and difficult journey. For now, though, I took solace in the fact that I wasn't alone. With Michael's help, I felt a renewed sense of determination to reclaim my life and secure a better future for my baby. With Michael's support, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We spent the next few days in a whirlwind of activity, gathering evidence, preparing for legal battles, and trying to make sense of everything. It was a busy but necessary time. Michael and I were determined to confront Tom and his family and to seek justice for the abuse I had endured. One evening, as we sat in Michael's cozy living room, I reviewed the recordings my father-in-law had secretly made. They were heart-wrenching, moments of verbal abuse, threats, and manipulative tactics used by Evelyn. I could barely listen to them without feeling the weight of the past pressing down on me. Michael's face was grim as he listened to the recordings. "This is serious evidence, Carol. We can use this to build a strong case. But we need to be careful about how we handle it." I nodded, trying to hold back tears. "I just want to make sure they're held accountable for what they've done." Michael looked at me with resolve. "We'll make sure they are. I've been working on filing the necessary documents and preparing for the legal proceedings. It won't be easy, but we have a solid case." The days turned into weeks as we prepared for the confrontation. The anticipation was nerve-wracking, but I found solace in Michael's unwavering support. He had become my rock through this turbulent time. Finally, the day of the court hearing arrived. I was nervous but determined. Michael and I arrived at the courthouse early, the weight of what lay ahead hanging heavily on our shoulders. As we walked through the corridors, I could hear the echo of our footsteps, a reminder of the gravity of the situation. The courtroom was intimidating, with its high ceilings and formal atmosphere. Evelyn and Tom were already there, looking composed, but I could sense their unease. The contrast between their facade and the turmoil inside me was stark. Michael and I sat at the plaintiff's table, and the proceedings began. Our lawyer presented the evidence, including the recordings, which caused a stir among the attendees. Evelyn tried to maintain her composure, but I could see the cracks forming in her veneer of control. Tom's face was a mask of anger and frustration, but he struggled to refute the evidence. As the trial progressed, the reality of the situation set in. The courtroom was a battlefield, and I was caught in the crossfire of a legal war. Michael was exceptional, cross-examining witnesses and presenting our case with conviction. His expertise and dedication were evident, and I felt a surge of gratitude for his support. Despite the tension, there were moments of hope. Evelyn's carefully crafted image started to crumble as the evidence mounted against her. The financial blow that had befallen her family due to the cancellation of the art gallery contract was a significant turning point. It was clear that her once unshakable position was weakening. As the final arguments were made, I felt a mix of hope and anxiety. The outcome of the case was still uncertain, but I knew that I had done everything in my power to fight for justice. The judge's decision came a few days later. The courtroom was packed with spectators, and I held my breath as the verdict was read. The judge ruled in my favor, granting the divorce and awarding me custody of my child. Evelyn and Tom were ordered to pay damages for their abuse and mistreatment. The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. I had fought a long and difficult battle, but it had been worth it. Michael and I embraced, tears of joy mingling with those of exhaustion. For the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. As we left the courthouse, the weight of the past seemed to lift slightly. Michael and I had taken a significant step towards reclaiming my life, and the support of my family had been invaluable. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I felt a renewed sense of hope. With the legal battle behind us, I could now focus on building a new life for myself and my child. The journey had been arduous, but the triumph of resilience and the importance of family support had shown through every challenge. The aftermath of the court proceedings was both a relief and a challenge. With the legal battles behind me, Michael and I turned our attention to rebuilding our lives. The road to recovery was not smooth, but each day brought us closer to a sense of normalcy. Michael and I spent the next few weeks settling into a routine. I moved into the guest house at our grandparents' estate, a cozy place that felt like a safe haven. It was comforting to be in a place that held so many positive memories from my childhood. The guest house had a warm, inviting atmosphere with its soft lighting and comfortable furniture. I set about making it feel like home for my child and me, filling it with toys, books, and the familiar sense of home-cooked meals. The first few nights were a whirlwind of emotions. My child, still adjusting to the new environment, clung to me with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. It was heartwarming to see them gradually grow comfortable in their new surroundings. Michael often stopped by to help, bringing meals and offering a listening ear whenever I needed it. I resumed my career as a schoolteacher, a move that felt both daunting and exhilarating. Returning to work was a step towards reclaiming my independence and finding a sense of normalcy. The transition was challenging, as I had to reestablish my routine and balance work with parenting. But with Michael's encouragement and support, I found the strength to persevere. The first day back in the classroom was a mix of nerves and excitement. I was greeted by my colleagues with warm smiles and supportive words. The students, too, were welcoming, and their eagerness to learn brought a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Every day at school was a reminder of why I had chosen this profession and why it mattered so much to me. Michael continued his carpentry work, and it was clear he found joy in his craft. He often talked about new projects and ideas, his enthusiasm evident. His support was unwavering, and he even began dating someone special, a kind woman who was understanding and supportive of his role in my life. Life at the estate slowly returned to a sense of routine. My child and I attended family dinners with Michael and our grandparents, where laughter and shared stories became a staple of our evenings. The bond between us grew stronger, and it was clear that the support of my family had been instrumental in navigating this challenging period. Meanwhile, Evelyn and Tom faced the consequences of their actions. Their once thriving real estate business crumbled under the weight of financial troubles and public scrutiny. The art gallery's decision to cancel their contract was a significant blow, and Evelyn's reputation suffered irreparable damage. It was clear that their once unassailable position had deteriorated significantly. The financial strain and personal turmoil took a toll on their relationship, leading to further complications in their lives. Tom, realizing that he no longer had control over his stepfather's assets, attempted to reconcile with me. He reached out, pleading for a fresh start. But after everything that had transpired, I found it impossible to forgive and forget. My focus was on healing and moving forward, not on reopening old wounds. Carol's father-in-law, who had discreetly supported me throughout the legal battle, eventually moved into an upscale assisted living facility. It was a bittersweet moment. His health had deteriorated, and though he had been a silent ally, his presence in my life had been significant. I visited him occasionally, ensuring he was comfortable and well cared for. As I looked back on everything that had happened, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey had been long and arduous, but the resilience I had discovered within myself and the unwavering support of my family had been the cornerstones of my recovery. Each day was a step towards a brighter future, and though the scars of the past remained, they were a testament to the strength and courage that had carried me through. The triumph of resilience and the importance of family support had never been more evident. As I walked through the peaceful gardens of the estate with my child by my side, I knew that I had emerged stronger and more determined than ever. The future was still uncertain, but with the love and support of those who mattered most, I was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. In the end, the story was not just about overcoming adversity. It was about finding strength in the face of challenges and discovering the power of family to help heal and rebuild. The journey had been transformative, and as I looked forward to the future, I did so with hope, courage, and a renewed sense of purpose.